You've got an incredible opportunity this evening. We can have an intimate conversation. We've had an amazing series of events that have been conceptualized by Wady. I've had the horrible task every time of having to pick hands. And the plus side of the turnout this evening is that if you have a question, you almost certainly will get an opportunity to intervene, or if you have a set of thoughts. And please, especially the young people, you've always been the ones asking the best questions at our sessions. We've appreciated that, and I hope that you will role model that to the adults in the room this evening. You also probably don't appreciate things that you only appreciate when you get older, like being in Johannesburg and being this close to such amazing South Africans that are here with you. There are many learners, many students whose dream it is to meet a John Carney, a Sylvia. And so I want you to take this opportunity. Don't be shy. Ask your questions. And I'm going to recognize your hands. I'm going to kick us off though, Ishmael. I've got a question for you. And I love the idea that so many of you on my panel are framing your remarks in relation to especially young South Africans, not just here, but also the ones who aren't here. And obviously, what we discuss can travel digitally these days, and we'll make sure that that happens. Almost exactly a year ago, we had a heat debate around Heritage Month in this exact venue. And the young people who came said that the discussion which we had put together, which exactly a year ago was around national identity, do we still have a common national identity, was a complete and utter waste of time, Ishmael, because they were struggling with things like school fees, with things like sanitary towels. If you don't have them, you have to skip many days in school if you are a girl child in this country. Drugs are big issues in our communities around this area. And they listed all the things that from a practical point of view are the things that they think that matter. And in many ways, Wady, if you remember, we were almost wrapped over our knuckles for framing a debate about national identity when the young people want to talk about material issues that affect them. So my first question is just to you, and I wonder as we reflect on why there isn't more of a celebration of art and artists currently in South Africa. Is it a false choice, or is it a real choice that our energies and our resources have got to be spent on prioritizing getting rid of mud schools, getting our feeding schemes right, transport? The students are protesting as we speak about fees. What do you say to someone who perhaps saw the advert for this evening and thought, you know what, these people are out of touch with the country. It's luxury to be worried about the arts and the artist in society.
Well, I think for me, the key factor is that there's an illusion around the word nation. We've never been a nation. Not before 1994 and not even after 1994. We're a country of people struggling to come together. And that simply means that all what's called our national days do not have any kind of national identity. We've seen very, very often how those particular days have been hijacked for political ends by political parties, with resources from the state being used for the purpose of political parties. And I think any attempt at creating a celebration that could have brought us together and build a nation did not happen. But I also think that we've come from a society where one part of our society thought of art as luxury, as recreation, as elite. And on the other side, we thought of it only as agency, as advocacy, as a tool that we could engage. And those two sides of art groupings have never come together. To simply say, this is what we now understand as art, this is what we understand as culture, this is how we express ourselves collectively or even individually. I think we still see art in very, very much as the divine in our societies. I recall last year at Heritage Day, an MP, her name will come back to me now, but she serves on the board of the South African Ballet, the Joburg Ballet, stood up in Parliament and spoke about how we've become a wonderful nation where ballet was once considered elitist and now is funded by the state. But in that very same breath, she did not talk about the Dada Masilos, about the Mamela Nyamzas, about the Gregory Mkomas, and everyone else who have contributed to building our country and who still continue to this day to fight for resources. And I think that we see the example I've given through art is very much the example that exists in health, in education, in sport, and in every other sector of our society. And as long as that exists, we're constantly going to be arguing for resources.
Sylvia, what's the place of art in contemporary struggles? So if you are a fallist, one of the fallist generation, and you think to yourself, fees must fall before I go to the market theatre, what do you say to that person?
I think we can walk and chew gum. You know,
I'm going to plagiarize that. I love it.
our history has shown us that while we were intensely and passionately involved with a struggle for liberation, we lived very complex and very full lives. And on the issue of seeing things with common vision, on the issue of nationhood, of building an identity, I have to go back to this book I've written. It's written in 4 parts. The first part is called Mixed, because that's what was on my birth certificate. In the 50s, everybody was mixed. There was no such thing as colored. The second part is colored, and it deals with a damaging identity of colored, of just killing off nations and rebranding them as nothing. And the third part is called Black, and that was coming to terms with the beauty and the excitement of Black consciousness and a time of identifying strongly with Biko. And the last part of the book is called Khoisan, because that's where this journey has led me to. And I'm bringing it up because something really amazing has happened since the book has been launched. I expected the usual suspects to buy it and come to the book functions, and we'll have lovely discussions amongst the converted, and something completely different has happened. I'm so taken aback every time by the diversity of South Africans who come to these events. At a book launch in the Free State at the Vryfees Festival, there was a huge rugby player who just wouldn't stop asking questions. And my son was so upset when I sent him a WhatsApp. He said, "You don't know Oli." And I had to say, no, I don't know Oli, but Oli is clearly a big thing. And my son sent me a long thing about who this prop forward was in the Springbok world. And at the end of the session, Oli insisted on driving me to the airport because he wanted to ask more and more questions. And he wasn't alone. I've recently had Facebook messages and WhatsApps from farmers in the Free State. And last night I was at a function in Cape Town where there were 2 young women. The one woman of Indian descent and the other woman was Xhosa speaking. And they were in their 20s, and they both said, "I read your book and you've written my story. This is amazing. You've captured my story exactly." And so I think what we fail to see, because we live very strange lives in this country, is that there is commonality. There is a strong stream, a thread that runs through this nation. And if you've ever been overseas and you've encountered another South African and you hug each other although you don't know each other, and you instantly speak Afrikaans although it's not your language, there's something that binds us that maybe we haven't yet learned to name. But it is up to the artists to show us what that thing is, because I think that we are building a nation, and it's just that we are not taking firm, bold steps because we come from a very difficult time and the waters have been muddied by an entirely disgusting current strand of leadership, especially in politics and commerce. And so I think that the artists at the moment are grappling to see through all of these superficial things that we've just been discussing to the heart of this nation. And when it comes to the current protest, I think it is hugely exciting. I am just a stone thrower from way back, and I love protest. I can't imagine life without chaos. And it's out of chaos that the universe creates. And so the chaos is taking us back so that we can fix the things we thought were fixed and that have been broken for a very long time.
Okay, I'm going to recognize some hands. I've got millions of questions, but I want to come to you. If you'd like to make a comment, share your own perspective, then I hope we've got a couple of mics, then we'll just get them around the room. Please don't be shy. Okay, yeah, in the front.
Is it on?
Yes, it's on. We can hear you.
Okay. Thanks, Eusebius. With such an eminent panel of people who've achieved such extraordinary things, I think I'd like to pick up the point John Carney made and others made about access. And we live in a country where 3% of schools teach the arts. That means drama, music, art. And whether you end up being an artist of any kind or not, the arts in the formative phases of a child are crucial. They teach life skills, they teach creativity, they teach imagination, or they promote the imagination. And for me, that's one of the first challenges we need to address as successful arts promoters. How do we change that balance? Because that is exclusion. The second thing is this word access, which bothers me an enormous amount, because we all know what wonderful things go on in South Africa in terms of music, art, performance, storytelling. But who gets to benefit from it? It's always the same small elite. And even though there are massive efforts, specifically from the people on the panel, to include more people, you are all heroes and pioneers in a country where this ought to be the norm, and it is not the norm. And for me, that, you talked about fractured conversations. For me, that is the source of those fractured conversations, that they are the people in the know with the access, with the financial means, or they know the right people to benefit. How are we going to change that?
I'm actually a gentleman. I was tempted to walk halfway to meet her halfway. But yeah, I just wanted to say that arts, I feel, are important to the nation in which they're conceived. So every nation makes art. Everybody makes art. You don't need sophisticated tools to make art. However, what happens when we do not appreciate our art is that they become unrecognized. The artists themselves become demoralized. And we see art more as a plan B rather than a plan A, because the society in which it is conceived does not fully appreciate it. And I just feel that there's also the gate. Every artist needs a for instance, me and my sister, we on YouTube, thought I'd the second for some free promotion. We vlog on YouTube. We needed a camera, which was very expensive. And I can tell you that young people here who go on YouTube and watch other young people. Am I doing something? Okay. Who are watching other young people on YouTube who want to also make videos, but the issue of access is a big problem. And that we must make access available in the form of schooling, because even as an artist, you need refinement. You need to be taught and how to present whatever you are creating in the most best way possible. So I just feel that we need to put a little bit more effort in first appreciating and celebrating our artists, even from grassroots level. And second, to open up the gates, because if somebody does not have a brush, somebody doesn't have a building to bomb or to graffiti on, there's no graffiti. So.
Thank you. Can we get the mic to the school, ladies and gentlemen? Couple of you have your hands up. Now I'll come to you.
Good evening. I don't know, am I going off topic, but I just wanted to ask a small, is it possible to raise school funds in a school where we don't even have textbooks, we don't have textbooks for all the subjects, and we don't have a proper teaching environment, whereas other schools, they don't pay no school fees at all, but they have a proper teaching environment and they have all their textbooks.
Okay, well, let's take those and then we'll have a second round. Can we start with you, please, John, on that question of, well, any of that if you want to respond to, I think access and excluding was key.
I had a conversation once with Professor Kada Asmal, and we were talking. He said, "You speak such good English." And I said, "Prof, what are you talking about? We'd just done a play at the Market Theatre, and I was complaining about the less number of young people in the audience, and I was thinking perhaps it's marketing, that the people that we are targeting with this play are not the right audience." And Professor Kada Asmal said, the only way we will get young people is to learn a new language, which is their language, is to speak to them in the language they use every day, even if it's incorrect in spelling. I sent money to my daughter, and she responded with G8. And I thought, I know the G7. It's now the G22. So what the hell is G8? And my son said, great, Tata, great. When we did the play, Caesar Barnes is Dead, written in 1972, the young, they went to WhatsApp, they're tweeting. It was sold out on the 4th preview. We've just done Zakesumdar's play 5. The young people, Facebook, they forgot the and speaking good English about how great this play, celebrating 40 years of the struggle of the Market Theatre, 40 years of 40 years of 1976, not listening to me. They don't understand that language. He's asking, how do you fundraise for a school when there are no desks, no books, no environment, no equipment, no library? How do you write chemistry when there wasn't a laboratory in your school? That's the question. Where does the art come in? Where does the art come in? I don't think the Department of Arts and Culture within the body of government, of responsible people who are tasked in looking at the future of a nation, that it is taken very seriously. First, the budget minister at about 1:45. He will finish at 4:45. And then the Minister of Education, and then the Minister of Defense. Poor Natim Tete will speak at 10:45. When the house is completely empty. I have listened to 5 to 4 State of the Nation's address by the president. Not once did he mention the arts. Only when, I don't know what Charlize Theron had said, he mentioned Charlize Theron. I don't think the president has ever met Charlize Theron. So the question of is a one. Expect government and expect an arm's length relationship, that they would not want to know the value of their rent they gave to you, Or do you now have learnt the language of fundraising, of how to speak to a particular company and comply with their funding criteria? So that year you will know that this year in Parliament, the Cabinet's priorities are job creation, poverty alleviation, health, education, youth empowerment, skills transference. Now you have to include these things in your application for funding, because then it would address what the criteria is. In the meantime, you have become an administrator and a fundraiser and an accountant of yourself when all you wanted was a little bit of a help. Just a little bit of, give me this so that I can be creative. I cannot be creative if I'm thinking about what am I going to eat tonight. I cannot be creative while I am told by my wife and my father, my mom, what are you doing? Why don't you get a job? Why am I back then when I'm now in a democratic South Africa? All I say, access is still going to be difficult. We don't have philanthropists. We don't have people who are rich who die and leave a third of their fortune to the arts, as they do around the world. In Brazil, the Minister of Art was a percussionist. In Cuba, the Minister of Art is a jazz player. In Argentina, the Minister of Arts is a painter. I can go on. It's only in our country that the doctor who has a surgery, becomes the Minister of Arts. A man who owns a farm, KwaZulu-Natal, is the Minister of Arts. A wonderful writer became very close with Paulo Jordan, and they took him off. And now we have a former Minister of Police and Safety and Security as the Minister of Arts. It is a portfolio where they feel you didn't make the Minister of External Affairs. You did not become a very important minister. You'll take care of the arts. What you mentioned, fall back, which I call double negative. I need to hear from you guys. Do you hear me when I speak? Or do I need to use G8 and mix it? And then we could understand each other. I'm stepping back, Isabias, from this issue that's happening. Fees must fall. I was saying to my good, wonderful friend here, George Bezos, I says, I don't want to think about it because I'm nervous what my opinion is. I did an interview with Jacaranda in the morning yesterday, and I asked Rian in Afrikaans, I said, "Bly vry my niks van fees must fall." I am not ready to answer. Because if I answer truthfully, I may become the revolutionary. If I answer truthfully, I may be supporting anarchy and chaos. If I answer truthfully, I may be in trouble with my own conscience. So the arts allow me, give me an opportunity to become a loner and speak about how my inner self reacts to the outer self. And if the outer self is full of this confusion, I get nervous because my art comes out as a confused piece. I'm the product of this environment. Therefore, if we look at government to provide access, to provide funding, not even the lottery does that. If we look, for instance, at corporate sector, profit margin, social responsibility. They would rather build a new school and a new clinic because there's a plaque on top there that says opened by and funded by Tokyo Sehwale, by Patrice Motsepe, by the Oppenheimers. When you create an artist and give support to an artist, I can't walk with a badge on my forehead, funded by Milo. So what do we do? How do we get this access? How do we get you, the people, fund the work we do by supporting what we do? When Barack Obama did his first campaigning for president, I was in Baltimore, people were donating $5. In every store, $5. It totaled up to nearly $1 billion. He was funded by people. Why can't we be funded by our people? They have money. They'll see Kanye West in Toyando. They'll see anything everywhere, except they won't see. So we are part of the problem. Can we be part of the solution?
sport if you say I must talk after John. You know that. But in oh, all right. Okay, well, I think the question that you raised about access, the point that you are raising about how society views or how society accesses what you are doing is what Brajon is talking about, is how when appreciation, when a person knows what they have to support, they need to understand what it is first before they can open their purses and support. When we did, I was just reminding Christopher Thiel about one of the most important international projects that we did, the Johannesburg Biennale. It was very costly, like all these major exhibitions are. The city had spent close on 25 million on infrastructure, on salaries, on everything, but we were running short of 635,000 to run the project. And all we were saying they wanted to close it, even after spending that amount of money. Mid-90s. And so my response to the question of what are you going to do, the answer that I gave was, it is not their fault. It is not the city fathers and the city council closing this piece. It's not understanding the role and the impact, that the negative impact that will happen if a project like this closes mid and it doesn't run the full course. But we managed to save it by we actually ran on skeleton staff just to keep the project running. So once people understand why it is important, they will be able to fund and they'll be able to come to the party. But I think our biggest challenge, maybe as artists and people in the arts, is that we should change ourselves quite a bit. We do not go out there and say, this is who we are, and this is what our role is, and this is why you need to support us. And maybe it is time that we say, every week there is a museum day. The museum day doesn't only happen once a year, or museum week. There is a museum day every week, so that people know how we meet them halfway. There are many ways where that can be done. There is an exhibition happening here. Maybe once a week it opens up until late, and it's half price, and Wady and them will work until late, and everybody else in the different, so that the society understands the role, but more than anything, the importance of this in their lives. We haven't done, I don't think we have not, I think we haven't been aggressive enough. We've been saying, yes, we're artists. Then people say, so what? There's Checkers and there's Pick and Pay, where we want to spend our monies. So I think being aggressive about who we are is what is going to make this access and this support by society across the board is what is going to help. Thank you.
Thank you, Bongi. Very incisive. You can speak after anyone. So false humility there. I'm going to hit the pause button on my two panelists to my right and come back to the audience. The evening is marching on slowly, and some of this conversation can spill out into the foyer area afterwards. So let me recognize a couple of hands. This young lady over here, and then, okay, you've got the mic, and then we'll go to you. And then I'm going to come to the back, take another learner, then you, sir, and then the front.
Yeah, thanks. A bit of an anecdotal opening. I had two different engagements this evening. I mean, I think the there's a debate on an inclusive economy at PNDM where the nominally existing Praveen Gordon will be debating these issues. And I was booked to be part of from the audience engaging there, and I chose this one. So I think in part is a reflection that there are quite a few things happening that we are not talking about. Is a reflection of the cultural wealth or well-being of the society in some way. But in some way, Bongi and others spoke about the arts being a barometer of where we're at. And having spent much of my time in the trade union movement and studying some of those areas for my academic interest now, is that there used to be something called workers' culture, right? There was Basna Molloy was a worker dancer. He worked with the chemical workers union, was a shop steward. You had the Samkol workers. You had all that, and it's a sad reflection, or maybe a correct reflection of the state of the trade union organization, not movement. So I think that in some way we shouldn't always lament. It says what is not happening. So that's the issue. And just a final point about Kader Asmal. I worked at one of my union jobs was worked within the teachers union. Kader Asmal was there then, as you remember, Minister of Education. They got into the idea that probably sports and that was not important, and food gardens replaced football fields even. So, we've been through crazy positions around sport, where every time either science is preferred for something else. But it does beg the question, coming back to the union movement and its arts and culture, they didn't go to this venue for it to become the arts. They would use union venues, they would use rallies, so maybe, Ismail, the idea of where art takes place, there used to be things that adhere to cinema or Apsara, and that clearly we need to reconceptualize the venue, which is the big cost, And a final point about your 1976 introduction of TV. Just read it today, by the way. The minister responsible then, the Afrikaans minister, refused to introduce TV because he called it the devil box. But part of his reason was that people won't read all Afrikaans people he meant, and there may be something to be discussing there.
Sorry, can we keep it there, to the same row? Yes, there. We'll work our way back.
Thank you. So I think the first thing I want to speak about, which is, and I think I'd actually really love to read Sylvia's book, because one of the things that I've been struggling with growing up is that, thinking about it, it's actually so strange, and that people have always asked me, what are you? Are you colored? Are you white? Are you Indian? And speaking about Heritage Day, and I feel like the arts has a place in here, because where do you identify yourself? Because I'm not the same as my parents either. My parents have a different identity because they've grown up in a completely different time. And I feel like when you interact with art, you're seeing it as a reflection on yourself. So I feel like in South Africa, we have that space where we need to ask ourselves, what stories are we telling? Are we telling South African stories? Are we telling black stories? Are we telling colored stories? And then the second thing I want to speak about is, we've spoken about how poor artists are in South Africa, and I feel like there's practical ways of remedying these things. Why is the Department of Education not purchasing South African art? I went to a high school where you only did Sizwe Banzi is dead is if you were a drama student, and that's if you were lucky. We never did South African art in school. And I did, in my undergrad degree, I did English, and out of 72 weeks of doing English, only 6 weeks was dedicated to South African art. So I feel like fees must fall and roads must fall, and even the protests that happen at Pretoria Girls, they are speaking to these issues, which is how do we allow black ideas or non-white ideas, whatever terms you want to use, into these spaces that we are occupying. And I feel like there are practical solutions, as simple as the Department of Education just purchasing Sizwe Banzi's Dead for schools.
Thank you. What's your name, by the way? Say again? Kamla. Okay. You want to read Sylvia? I want to read you. Seriously, that was absolutely stunning. It's amazing, just on the writers and the decolonization project around what we teach in our institutions. I mean, at Rhodes University, previously when I told this anecdote, I held back on where it took place, but I think it's time to be blunt and honest. Mandla Langa was invited by the politics department. And the politics department, listen, we're paying for all this money to get this guy here. He's great, a great South African artist. Do you want us to share him with you in the English department? And the English department's response was, Mandla Langa, who's that? We don't teach him. So it's absolutely shocking. You can even be a first-class English literature student in this country without reading the works of Zakes Mda, or even having heard of him, let alone other writers who've been slightly less prolific but as good. So I thank you for your intervention.